tutorial we're going to build a replica of the MaxTac Helmet from the video game Cyberpunk 2077. MaxTac serves as a SWAT team to handle most of the dangerous situations in Night City. If you've never crafted in foam before, there are quite a few tutorials available on the internet. My suggestion would be searching for Punished Props and Evil Ted's content on the web and YouTube. You'll need some half-inch EVA foam floor mats. If you live in the US, you can find them at most hardware stores, but particularly at Harbor Freight Tools. In addition to the EVA foam, you'll need some 6mm and 2mm craft foam, which you can find at fabric stores or craft stores. Aside from the foam, you'll need something to make the eye sockets, clear plastic for the lenses, LED lights, and a battery holder. I'll go into more detail regarding each part as they get consumed. Speaking of consumables, you'll also need the following: contact cement, E6000 glue, and at least one can of black Plasti Dip spray paint, and some caulk. You'll need the following tools: a craft or utility knife, a knife sharpener, some small paint brushes, scissors, sewing pins, and some disposable brushes for the contact cement. Finally, you'll need the basic helmet. The helmet is constructed from half-inch EVA foam. Instructions for the basic helmet can be purchased from the Punished Props website. I'm not going to cover construction of the basic helmet because both Punished Props and Evil Ted have tutorials that cover that topic. Begin by downloading the resource pack from the link in the text below. The resource pack includes STL files for 3D printed eye and light sockets, as well as a PDF file that contains the patterns for the foam pieces. Print the patterns on 8.5 by 11 paper or cardstock and cut them out. The thickness shown on the pattern pieces indicates the material thickness that it's used on. So if the pattern is marked 12mm, it's for EVA foam. The pattern for the side arc is in two pieces. Glue or tape the two pieces together to make a single pattern piece. Patterns get held to the foam with sewing pins. Trace around the pattern with a felt tip pen like a Sharpie. Then pull the pins and remove the pattern. You're going to hear those words a lot during this tutorial, so get used to it. Cut out each foam piece using a sharp utility knife. Whenever possible, make a single continuous cut. Smooth out any rough cuts with 100 grit emery cloth. For 2mm foam, it's possible to cut out pieces using a pair of sharp scissors. The lenses are made from clear plastic packaging that are pulled out of the recycle bin. In this case, it was packaging from a bottle of balsamic vinegar. Don't use pins to hold the pattern pieces. Hold them in place with one hand and trace around them with the other. With all the foam and plastic pieces cut out, it's time to start the build. As with most foam projects, contact cement is used to stick the pieces together. Contact cement will not generally melt or otherwise degrade EVA or craft foam, and it's still soft enough when cured so that it's easy to clean up the joints. Contact cement isn't like other glues. It gets applied to the mating surfaces of both sides of a seam. It's allowed to cure first, and then the two sides are pressed together where they'll instantly stick to each other. Contact cement is good, but I also like to reinforce joints by adding a bead of E6000 glue across the inside of a seam. Bend the front filler piece to conform to the opening in the base helmet. Pin the front filler piece in place and mark its extent on the base helmet with a felt tip pen. Remove the pins and remove the filler piece. Apply a coating of contact cement to the mating surfaces of the base helmet and the filler piece. When the cement cures, carefully press the filler piece into place in the opening of the base helmet. Use pins to hold the filler piece in place if necessary. Reinforce the inside of the seam with a bead of E6000 glue. Allow the E6000 glue to dry. Brush on a coat of contact cement to the mating surfaces of the front and rear crest. Allow the cement to cure and press the two pieces together. Position the nose on the front of the crest and mark its extent with a felt tip pen. Spread contact cement to the crest and the nose piece. Allow the cement to cure and press the nose piece into place on the front of the crest. Use a sharp utility knife to shave the nose piece from its tip until it's even with the crest. Starting at the tip of the filler piece, pin the assembled crest to the base helmet. Make sure to keep the crest centered on the base helmet. Use a felt tip pen to trace the extent of the crest onto the base helmet. Remove the pins, set the crest aside face down. Apply contact cement to the back of the crest and to the marked area on the base helmet. Allow the cement to cure. Again, starting from the tip of the front filler, begin pressing the crest into place on the base helmet. Use pins to hold the crest in place if necessary. The side arcs are cut from 2mm craft foam. Starting from the rear of the helmet, pin each arc to the base helmet working forward and adding pins as necessary. The arc will need some fitting and trimming. Use a felt tip pen to trace the shape of the arc onto the base helmet. Remove the pins and set the arc aside. Apply contact cement to the marked area on the base helmet. And on the back of the arc. Allow the cement to cure. Again, working from the rear of the base helmet forward, press the side arc in place. Ensure that there are no creases or wrinkles. Trim the excess with scissors or a utility knife. Place a cheek piece ring into position on the round end of each side detail piece. Trace around the inside and the outside of the ring using a felt tip pen. Set the ring aside. Mark the extent of the 1/4 inch chamfer on the side of the 4 detail pieces using a straight edge and a felt tip pen. These lines are guides for the cut. Use a sharp utility knife to shave the chamfer starting from the rounded end to the flat end. It will be difficult to cut in one smooth motion, but do your best. Use 100 grit emery cloth to smooth out the chamfer cut. Line up 2 of the detail pieces on one of the cheek bases. Mark their extent using a felt tip pen. Because the backs of the side details are textured, apply an extra thick coat of contact cement. Apply a coat of contact cement to the marked area of the cheek base. Allow the cement to cure. Press the detail pieces in place on the cheek base. To finish off the cheek pieces, apply contact cement to the 4 ring details. Apply contact cement to the marked area on the cheek details. Allow the cement to cure and carefully press the rings into place on the cheek detail. The optical assembly is made up of the cheek sub-assemblies and the left and right optical bases. Position an optical base on the end of a cheek subassembly so that the notch in the optical base aligns with the center valley of the cheek subassembly. Pin the optical base to the cheek. Repeat this for the other optical subassembly. An optical subassembly is glued to the base helmet at the nose and the sides. Aligning the left and right optical assemblies on the base helmet is done by eye. The rear of the optical assembly should be even with the bottom edge of the base helmet. This will leave a prominent jowl hanging down below the optical assembly's bottom edge. Mark the extent of the optical assembly where it contacts the base helmet. Be sure to mark the jowl, as this part of the base helmet will be removed later. At this point, a decision has to be taken about the optics. Each side of the helmet has an eye socket and 2 light sockets. If a 3D printer is available, use the STL files included in the downloaded resource pack. If you don't have a 3D printer, there are some other options. For instance, the lenses of the original prototype use glass lids of these little storage jars. Bottle caps were used for the 2 flush-mounted light sockets, and EVA foam rings were used for the 2 proud light sockets. If these handy glass top jars aren't available, try cutting some 1/2 inch long rings from 2-inch PVC pipe for the eye sockets. Sand the edges, spray paint the rings black, and glue on clear plastic lenses. Use 1-inch PVC for the light sockets, following the same steps of cut, sand, paint, and add lens. Position the eye and flush-mounted light sockets on the optical base. Trace around the socket with a felt tip pen, and cut out the hole for the socket. Trace around a surface-mounted eye socket, but instead of cutting a hole for the socket to fit into, bore a hole through the optical base to accommodate wiring for the LED lights. LED lights mounted in an eye socket can be left just as they are, but for added detail try gluing a glass gem over the mounting hole. This will diffuse and color the light from the LED. Once the holes for the eye and light sockets have been made in the optical base, remove the sockets and set them aside. They will be added back into the helmet after painting. Continue with building the optical assembly. Remove the pins and set aside the left and right optical assemblies. Mark the extent of the cheek pieces on the back of the optical base using a felt tip pen. The back of the optical base is textured, so add an extra thick coating of contact cement to the marked area, as well as a coating of contact cement on the edge of the cheek piece, and press the two pieces together. Repeat this for the other optical subassembly. An optical subassembly is glued to the base helmet at the nose and the sides. Mark the extent of the optical assembly where it contacts the base helmet. Apply contact cement to the optical assemblies and the base helmet. Press the optical assemblies in place. Put the pins back in place. The nose is a weak spot, so reinforce the joint between the nose and the left and right optical assembly with E6000 glue. The glue is runny, so be careful not to let it run out the front of the helmet where it will be visible. When the E6000 is set, remove the pins. The side detail will most likely require some fitting. This 2mm thick foam detail piece runs from the rear of the optical assembly to the edge of the rear crest. Pin the detail piece to the base helmet at the rear of the optical assembly. Continue adding pins working from the rear. Use a felt tip pen to mark any excess foam and trim with scissors. Once the detail piece is fitted, pin it back in place and mark the extent on the base helmet with a felt tip pen. Remove the pins and the detail piece. Apply contact cement to the marked area on the base helmet and to the back of the detail piece. Allow the contact cement to cure. Working from the front to rear, press the detail piece into place on the helmet. The detail piece has its own little detail, the 2mm thick detail dot. Position the dot by eye and glue the dot in place using contact cement or E6000 glue. Pin in place if necessary. The gap between the base helmet and the optical assembly is filled with the 6mm optical assembly filler pieces. The pieces may require some fitting. Mark any excess material with a felt tip pen and then trim off the excess material with the utility knife. Because the filler piece will need to be pushed into place between the optical assembly and the base helmet, contact cement isn't a good choice. Instead, use E6000 glue on the edge of the filler piece and push into place. Wipe off any excess glue. More E6000 can be added to the inside of the joint. Except for the eye and light sockets, the helmet is completely assembled. It's time to fillet the edges with caulk. The fillets are made with 3/8 inch craft sticks, more commonly known as popsicle sticks. Squeeze out a small dab of caulk on the seam. Use the rounded end of the craft stick to pull the caulk into the valley between the two pieces of the craft foam. Be sure to remove any excess caulk before it dries. Continue until all seams are filled. Allow the caulk to dry. Clean up any excess caulk by sanding it with 100 grit emery cloth. There are a number of small detailed divots in various places on the helmet. 2 on the front of each optical base and 1 in the center of each detail circle. I used a wood burner with a rounded tip installed to make the divots. An alternate method would be using a drill bit or a piece of heated metal rod. The EVA foam will melt almost instantly, so it's important not to push it too deeply. Apply at least 3 coats of black Plasti-Dip spray paint to the exterior of the assembled helmet. Apply more paint as needed to ensure that no caulk is showing through and that the assembled helmet is evenly coated. Be sure to use the paint in a well-ventilated area and wear breathing protection. My paint booth does a pretty good job of capturing the overspray, but my workshop still gets filled with fumes. Since there's no way of knowing the exact components a builder will use to light the helmet, these are just some general guidelines. This assumes you're using the 3D printed light sockets whose STL files are included in the resource pack. Drill out the centers of the light socket with a bit large enough to allow the insertion of the LEDs that you're going to use. Handpick out 4 glass gems. Choose gems that are mostly round and flat on the bottom. Any color will do, but the lenses in the game appear to be green. Apply a bead of E6000 glue around the bottom of the gem and place it in the center of the eye socket. Avoid getting glue in the hole drilled for the LED. Allow the glue to dry. Apply a thin bead of glue around the rim of the light socket and press the lens in place. Remove any glue that squeezes out. Set aside and allow to dry. Repeat this for the remaining 3 sockets. The eye sockets are pretty easy. Apply a bead of E6000 glue around the rim of the eye socket and press the clear plastic lens in place. Wipe away any excess glue and allow to dry. Add some E6000 glue to the bottom of each socket flange where it contacts the optical assembly. Push each socket into place, making sure that you don't press on the clear plastic lenses. Use a number 2 brush or similar to add silver highlights around the side arcs, the inside of each divot, and to make the 2 rectangles on the front of the crest. Additionally, silver highlights can be added to the light sockets and eye sockets. Use a dry brush technique to add some subtle highlighting to the edges of the crest, etc. At this point, the helmet is complete and wearable. However, it's possible to add lights to the helmet too. This can be done in a number of different ways. For this build, I cannibalized a battery-powered string of Christmas lights I purchased from the dollar store. As of this writing, these lights are available on eBay. As you can see, I had to cut down the number of lights and add some wire. The lights and wires are held in place using dabs of E6000 glue. Use pins to hold down the wires while the glue dries. Cover the wiring with a scrap 2mm craft foam where the harness crosses the inside of the nose. The battery box is held in place with Velcro tape. If you have any questions about this build, please leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to reply. Thanks for watching.